So we're going to take a look at our PTZ cameras today, newly released in newer updated housing. I'm Paul Krofssik with Digital Watchdog. My email is down at the bottom, paulk@digital-watchdog.com. And you guys can send me you guys can send me an email about anything you want concerning this or Digital Watchdog products or really anything. We are going to go over some questions. I'm already getting questions come in. I'll answer them at the end, and I may even answer them during the presentation. So we will get started. Thank you very much. So we're releasing two models, a 3 megapixel and a 4K model. 4K is about 8.2 megapixel cameras. One is a 36x and the 4K is a 30x. We're going to focus on the 4K one as far as the setup goes because the setup menus are very similar in them. I mean, the only difference really is changing the resolution. So you won't be missing out on anything. We do have a demo with a 4K setup in our California office, and we're mounting a 4K one. It's actually already up. We're waiting to run some wires through a renovation we're doing, and then we're also going to mount the 3 megapixel version up in Tampa. So we'll actually have a demo version for you guys to look at now and then in the near future if you want to see the 36X. They come with a PoE injector, okay, for proper power. Again, it's our newer design housing. And let's just talk about some of the features. I'm just going to go, I'm not going to read off every feature. They are WDR. They're multi-codec and quad stream. Every stream but the motion JPEG stream can be at least 1080p, meaning we've got a couple streams that can be 4K and lower. We've got one H.265 stream. The top it can be is 1080p. And so this way, if you have other things, access control systems, video analytics, something like that, where you want to tap the camera streams, you can do it. So the multiple codec is good for integration. The 1148-foot IR with intelligent camera sync, smart IR, is amazing. Okay. Again, maybe one of those things where you hit one of our demo sites at night and have the camera go in and look at it. It's a really amazing and it really works smart IR. And what the intelligent camera sync means is as you zoom in, okay, as you get closer, the IRs get brighter, and as you pull out, the IRs get less powerful, okay? So this way you can get a wider view versus a tighter view. So as your angle goes in and you're going from your 4.6 millimeters down to your 165 millimeter, the IR beam gets much tighter. All right, so that's key. And like I said, they look great. I'm going to log into one of our sites and actually try to run one of the cameras for you. I don't know how Zoom will like that, but we're going to find out. The other things we want to talk about is two-way audio. So if you wanted to, you could hook up a mic and speakers to it. Of course, have to make sure we got the pairing right, but mic and speakers to it and talk through the camera via Spectrum, okay? So it has audio in and it has an audio out, and Spectrum supports the two-way audio. So you'll be able to go at least through the PC client, and we're going to test it with the mobile client to make sure everything works properly with that, because sometimes the mobile client things, because of bandwidth, may not respond as well as a full desktop client. So it also has a micro SD card for emergency backup. So what that means is if the camera loses connection to the server, the SD card will start recording. Okay. Now the thing is you need backup power, so you need another power source for that camera to continue to work. So if the switch went down, it would need a backup power. But if just, let's say, the server was having a problem, micro SD card would do it. And now with the way Spectrum uses the virtual cameras, you can actually import that video. It won't import automatically, but you can import that video from the SD card down to the server. So at least you'd have it. Again, PoE injector included, and these are IK10 rated impact resistance. Now, most of the time you put PTZs up pretty high, So you don't have to worry too much about someone hitting them with a baseball bat or something like that, but they're designed to protect themselves, be protected in that way. So again, triple codec camera, you know, been messing around with these a lot, and we'll, you know, you'll be able to demo them. So this is what's in the box. This was much harder to do because my space is not meant for a large box that this comes in, so we protect it very well. See, we got a smart IR, PoE injector. I implore you to use the built-in PoE injector, or use, if you have to put it onto a switch, the switch actually supports PoE plus. I think it's PoE plus plus winds up being 28 watts, okay? And make sure it can support that. And of course, all the other cameras on, there's enough budget in there, because the worst thing you can do to some gear is underpower them. Okay, it's one thing for them to take a spike or a surge. There's the PoE injector, LAN PoE. Going to show you some cables here, power cable that comes with it, and then of course the cables that are on the camera. That's your safety line, your cover for the Ethernet cable, and then of course you got your Ethernet connection, power connection. And then if you look there, and I'm going to have a better representation of this, what to hook up. You got a little labeling system on what to hook the different wires up to. Okay, so if you're worried about the audio part, it's actually labeled right on there, what to do with the audio. And again, this thing's pretty big. Get that out of the way. And you've got your sensor, your two IR emitters, your receiver, where you screw it in, put your safety line on that screw hole, and away you go. So again, a lot of stuff comes in the box. You got your terminal blocks over here. So you can go in and actually, again, take a look at that. Now, we're also at the end. I'm going to show you the brackets that you need for it. But the cabling for the camera is power, so you could use that as backup power if you needed to. You've got your Ethernet, which of course carries your PoE, your audio in. Okay, so you got audio in, audio out. You've got 4 alarm ins and 1 alarm out. So you could have physical alarms trigger this camera. But when we get into the programming, you're also going to see some other items in there. So the other part we're going to look at is there's a little metal reflective panel here on the physical camera. A little hard to see. You undo the screws, and behind it is a reset button, so you can reset the camera back to factory defaults. Also, a slot for the micro SD card. Okay, and you got to make sure that, of course, the cover, all the covers on there, so it is waterproof. The way the camera is designed, very unlikely water is going to splash up here. But, you know, you never know. But you want to make sure, obviously, that that cover is sealed back to where it was. So you can reset it from that spot in the camera. So, of course, different resolutions. The great thing about this camera, supports all the resolution. Of course, most of you guys are going to set this thing for 4K. All right, so it's 4K resolutions. Comes equipped with our Starlight Plus, so it actually works very well in low light conditions. Although because of the IRs, most of the time you see these installed, I mean, I think every install I've seen, they've had the IRs on just because the IR is so powerful, especially at a distance. You want to get something, you know, 500 feet away, you're going to be able to see it clearly with the IRs on, where at night, there's not, you know, not enough light over there, you're not going to be able to see it. So, of course, you got wide dynamic range built in the camera. So, again, this is more of an outdoor-built camera. So I'd actually recommend having the WDR off. Now, if you have it inside a building and it's going to be looking out a door, such like these things are, you would turn the WDR on. But, I mean, for most of the time, you're hanging these outside a building. You're not going from a dark area to a bright area, or bright area to a dark area. You're getting not an even, but a consistent light throughout the field of view of the camera, so you don't really need WDR on for outdoor installation. And of course, our Smart IR, again, controls the amount of IR light depending on the proximity of a person or a thing. Also, though, as you zoom in, it increases the power of the IR, and then allows the IR light to focus, versus then as you zoom back, it actually spreads the IR light out. And then our 3D DNR, and we've had this technology in different levels of the technology in our cameras for a long time. And over, a period of, 10 or so years, it's just improved and got better and better and better. And so now, I actually tell people to turn it on high because it actually works really good. Now, again, it works better, of course, in the low light stuff. Okay, so you're worried about the low light technology, you can go in and view it there. So camera setup. So we're going to go, this is Spectrum, and I'm cheating. I'm actually using 4.1. Don't tell anyone. And you can go into camera setup, set motion. Now, of course, you've got a PTZ camera, so it's going to move a lot. You can set for motion. But if the camera has a fixed home position, you could have motion detection on it. But here's where you can go in. You can go right into the setup of the camera, and it passes. I'm just going to pause this a second. It passes the username and password you're using for that camera. Okay? So it passes it through the system. Okay? So once you put the username and password in, whatever you set it to, it passes it. So if the person is not authorized to use it, it's not an admin, it's just an operator, then you'll just get a blank menu that says you can view live. Okay? So it passes whatever credentials you're using to access the streams to access setup in the camera. So you may just want to on the initial setup, be able to do this, but maybe not use that for the operating one. But it is nice to be able to go in remotely and be able to go set up the camera. Now, you can, in Spectrum users, block access to any of these functions in the camera. So you could also do it by their user. So you don't want them to access any, I think it's called setup menus. It won't let them access setup menus. So let's continue on. Come here, mouse. So we're going to go here and go through these menus. All right. So we've got a basic one. So basic, what it means is basic. We're going to go through and say, we've got our user set up. So we can add users to it. We could even enable anonymous login, which I just wouldn't recommend, even though it's anonymous just for streams. You can create an operator, an admin, or a guest, and then, of course, put their username and password in there. Then we're going to go to network, and we have a very simple, put in your IP address, subnet mask, router. Again, this is your basic configuration to get the camera going. Then I kind of zoomed in view because some of the writing was small, and we've got our NTSC or PAL choice. That's its capture mode. Then you can look at the codec, H.264, H.265. Again, older VMSs, H.264. But look at all these choices for resolution. So you could be going over a hinky network, some kind of wireless thing, whatever, and maybe just have to lower the resolution of the camera. You can just lower it to, I think it'll let you do 7 megapixel. It'll let you do 6 megapixel, 5, 4, all the way down to 1/6. You have a motion JPEG outputs for the home automation system. Sometimes you want a JPEG output. We've got another one that will go up to 5 megapixel. Okay, another stream. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 streams built into the camera. So it really gives you a lot of options for integration and stuff like that. Or even if you want to, lower that second stream going into Spectrum to save a little more hard drive space, you can do it. Change the codecs on them and get maximum compatibility out of it. So really kind of a cool, change the bit rate on them all. Just a really huge amounts of functionality in the camera itself. So we also have a on-screen display. Just going in here to show you this. So you can change where to put the title. If there's a PTZ function, what's happening with the camera? Is it going left? If it's going right, who's pressing what button on the camera? Where to put the date and time. So right now, our date and time stamp is up here. All right. And then, of course, do we want to add a line? Do we want to add a subtitle to it? Maybe name the camera in the subtitle or name the camera type of camera, and then the subtitle down below. And of course, we can change the colors. So again, on this setup, you're probably going to see it like 2 seconds later. You'll see the color change to green on there. Once it decides to do it, there you go. See it change to green. I find that for the most part easier to read unless you're on a coarse green grass. and then hit save, and then that one should appear up in the corner here somewhere. Let's say 4K. Takes a second for it to update. So it'll say 4K PTZ up there. So you can change around, put these titles and information where you want, because some organizations want the date and timestamp burned into the video. All right, so that's why that's why we're doing that, is we're burning into the video, so this way it's generated at the camera, it's not generated from the VMS. So over here we've got audio. So this camera again has two-way audio. You can adjust the input volume, output volume, and then of course enable full duplex. So then again, you can talk back and forth between the client from the PC or the Mac directly to a person out there while you're looking on the camera. And of course, change your input volume. And how the audio is going to behave, it depends on the mic setup you have and where it's positioned. So outside, you know, it's going to be a lot harder to do it, let's say, than indoors, because you have an indoor, and of course you have the help acoustics of the walls and stuff like that, making the audio from the thing better. Output, I mean, you can get that as loud as you want, depending on if you want to put an amplifier in there and stuff like that. So then we go from, I'm going to flip back up to basic. Video and image. Come on, Paul. There we go. We already went over this, so we're going to, there we go. So camera setup. Over here in camera setup, you can, I'm going to again pause this a second. We can adjust our exposure control from auto. If you're having trouble with lights, these are usually older fluorescent lights. You might be seeing some flicker. You can go in here and make an adjustment, or actually attempt to make an adjustment at the shutter speed level of the camera to try to reduce the flicker. I would say to you, leave it on auto. This camera seems very resistant to that. This value here is adjusting the exposure level of how slow the shutter will go, okay? And that's down here. So I'm sorry, this is gain for the video for the equivalent of brightness. And then down here is your differences in your shutter speeds. Or do you want to make the shutter fixed? Again, I'd have it on auto, the shutter speed, rather than fixed, unless you are indoors. Then if you're going to have indoors, the lighting is going to be about the same all the time. I would do it, but the auto settings on this is so good, I would just leave them on. And then we're going to go to brightness and contrast and all that stuff. So we'll go through here. I'm going to drag over a camera. And it's not nighttime, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank the brightness up. And we're going to scroll down. We're going to hit save. And you would think cranking it up that high would oversaturate the screen. But the way the auto functionality works, it actually just brightened it up. It didn't overdo it. It didn't make it the lights come out blinding. This building is still see the sign over there, Williams. So it didn't overdo it. It's very subtle. Okay, how all these controls work, which is good because it allows you to really tweak them in, whether it's sharpness, saturation. I just wanted the grass to look a little greener, you know. And then we can of course manually do white balance and change the red gain, the blue gain, things like that on there for white balance, and then enable wide dynamic range. So from the factory, I believe it's on. I would say to you outside, I'd turn it off. Okay. And then we're going to go over here. We're going to go to the next slide here. So again, not a fan of having wide dynamic range on outside. Noise reduction, actually on this one I would turn up. And then when you enable defog, so defog is not a defogger in the camera or a little windshield wiper that goes on that wipes away fog on the camera. What it does is it looks for something that would be mist or fog or some obstruction, maybe snow, maybe hard rain, and then makes adjustments to the brightness and contrast so it can make the view a little easier. So I would actually turn that on. If you tend to get a lot of changeable weather, we're actually pretty sunny in Florida, so you leave it on low. If you're in more of an area where you get morning fogs and, you know, mist and stuff like that, I would leave it on high, okay? And also I'm going to switch metering mode to spot, because I just find that spot works better than center or average, okay? Again, personal, you know, personal preference. So we went over here. We changed it. Now we're looking, see the blacks are a little blacker, whites are a little whiter. We can still see the building. So everything is still looks really good on this camera. So these controls won't overdrive the picture. So let's go here. There you go. And the final part is I have enable IR, so I have day and night control, so I can go day, night. I can set the threshold level of when it's going to flip the sensitivity. So right at dusk, it gets a little too dark. And again, this camera is pushed out away from the building. If there's an eave above it, shouldn't be affected by it. So the threshold, low, medium, high is when it's going to flip from day to night, okay? So you have it on automatic, set it on, probably leave it in factory is fine, okay? And then you got to decide whether you want to turn IR on or off. It's on from the factory, okay? And it has some preset settings, and there are a lot of settings in there. And because I got this camera 4 days ago, I haven't been able to dig into every one of these settings, but let's take a really close look at some of these. So when the camera flips on initially, it'll start off not at its highest power, okay? When the camera's in a fixed position, it'll go bright. When it's moving, it's in the same thing, same setup, okay? And then all these things are to keep the IR from, as the camera's moving, from distorting on the screen. So you can actually turn these on default and leave them, and they'll look good. But if you're following someone, sometimes the tendency of IR to actually make the person look either over bright or they're moving and they have this ghost imaging to them. The way this thing works is to eliminate a lot of that. It might, in certain situations, require some tweaking, and I would go ahead and tweak it. And we do have instructions in the manual on some basic settings on this, but I would leave it on factory, and I would just say if it's moving IR mode, meaning the camera's moving, I'd leave it on high or middle, because it does adjust for distortion caused by IR when the camera's whipping around, and this camera will go very fast. All right, but from the factory, it's enabled. Most of these are in. You see, you can use it by sensor, or maybe you have the camera on black and white and its IRs are always on, or it's in a warehouse. Even though it's bright, it's up in the ceiling, it's usually pretty dark. Maybe you want the IR on anyway, even though it's black and white, you can't see color boxes or whatever. Maybe it makes it easier to see something that's make things seem, you can see things more clearer, especially if you have this thing up in the ceiling in a warehouse. So next section we're going into is the event. So we have event in, so we can enable on, so we enable, sorry about that. We're going to go back to this and just stop. So you can do all kinds of events, even on boot. So you can have enable on boot, set a short dwell time. So the boot means the camera's powering up, all right? And you can have an event, like if the camera powered down and powered up, you could have the camera do something. So we have event in, okay, and then event out, all right, built into the camera. So we can go in, we can have an, of course, alarm input trigger, okay? Are they normally open, normally closed? Is there a dwell time? The usual stuff. You guys have probably put 100 of these alarms in here. Then you've got manual trigger, okay? So I believe that this is a software input. The camera even has motion detection, okay? And so you can set up motion detection in the camera to do certain things. But because Spectrum has a really good motion detection, for some reason it's not redisplaying for Zoom. Spectrum has good motion detection. You can set up all the events and do it. I would do this in Spectrum, this part. And then event out. So let's look at event out. We can do email, okay? We can have it email on event, attach put an attachment to it, attach an image for it. And here's the thing now, because we're going to release 4.1, and some of you guys sat in on our 4.1 sneak peek, we're going to have notifications directly to your phone if the system is connected to the cloud, okay? So this system happens to be connected to my cloud account. So if I wanted to, I could have a motion event from Spectrum be sent to me now. I wouldn't tell anyone to do a motion event, but certainly an alarm input event, something like that. So you can do some of this up in Spectrum, but you may want it to come from the camera, but it would require the camera to have an internet connection because it's got to be able to get to an SMTP server or at least get to the local mail server. So just got to keep that in mind. And the camera does a lot of stuff, but usually with a camera installs, especially once you get, 8, 9, 10, much over 10 cameras, you want to keep the traffic coming from those cameras isolated from the rest of a corporate network, just because it will totally freak out a IT guy going like, where's all this traffic coming from? Well, it's from the cameras you guys wanted. We got to isolate it. So by all means, you can use this stuff, but you wind up maybe exposing, the corporate network to maybe some undue traffic. So keep that in mind. So we can also go out to an FTP server, but the FTP server can be local, to trigger an alarm out. We can create an audio alert. So enable FTP, we can have multiple servers to send images to. And here's the thing is you may have something that is, let's say, scanning faces, scanning license plate, or scanning something like that. You could conceivably have it shooting JPEGs of people's faces to a server, have it do it every couple of minutes, whatever. So there's a lot you can do with this. It's designed so you can work with a lot of different equipment on it. Of course, we can then trigger an alarm out. We have one alarm out, normally open, normally closed, very simple. Alarm input is triggered, something's triggered, alarm out is triggered. And go to the next for you guys. So we can have an audio alert and we can have a file. So again, you have a speaker hooked up to it, an event happens. And I believe you can actually send an event on a soft trigger from Spectrum to trigger this to send out an audio, but you can already do that in Spectrum. So Spectrum can create a manual audio alert, like click a button, you've entered a restricted area. You can have it trigger a PTZ preset, so something happens externally, triggers one of the presets. So event out record, if you have the SD card in there, you could have an event tell the camera to start recording, okay? Again, you can do that in Spectrum, so I would put the SD card in there only if the customer wants some backup. Now, XML notification may be very helpful because XML, you could have data sent from this, okay, to a server, okay, on whatever port, send data to it so you could have the camera send events to, let's just say, Spectrum that are above and beyond what it would normally do, and you can have Spectrum react to it. Okay, so, and if you want, I think we're planning on doing a short overview of the Spectrum API once 4.1 is released, so we'll probably have a webinar on that. That one would be a little bit of programming, but it'll just tell you how the ins and outs of the event server works in 4.1. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be doing more and more of these. So the next mode is boost mode, and what boost mode is let's say I have the camera normally recording at 15 frames a second. You could set a boost mode to say, okay, I want to go to 30, so normal 15, whatever the bit rate is, I want to set it for 30, 6,000. You can go to 10,000 for the bit rate, by the way. And then, of course, you can put a notification server in here. And see, now this is interesting. And like I said, I've got to find the API for this, but it will allow you to do HTTP, post, or get, which means it'll ask for data or just push data to another IP, IP addressable machine that takes HTTP requests. So then we have event map. So event map, and I gotta pause this again. So hold on, here we go. So we can have I'll let it just pay forward a little bit more. Here we go. So we have on boot, which means the camera pops up. We'll send an email, send something to an FTP server. Does it trigger an alarm out? Does it do an audio alert? Does it send an XML notification? Does it do a boost? So this allows you to set up a if-then scenario. This happens, camera records 30 frames a second. This happens, you go to preset whatever. This happens, you go to notification server. This happens, you send out an email address. Send out an email. So you can do a real lot inside the camera. I would say boost mode, the XML notification, and you can do this in Spectrum, but it's nice to have the audio alert and have it just sort of parked at the camera, and then whatever speaker you're using for the audio alert out there, rather than having to go back and forth to the server. But I just really like the way that this is laid out. Really gives you a good workflow for creating events. So we'll keep going. So we got a new event. Call this event anything we want. I don't know. I forget what I typed in here. Camera restart. There we go. And then on boot, alarm input 1, trigger 1. Let's go back to that. Pause. So, got these triggers, right, which are software in, right? Motion, network loss does something, triggers an alarm out. You're going to see something with this other stuff very shortly. We even have a time trigger, certain time of the day, preset X. That's why you have the time set in this. Very important to have the time set. Certain time of day, pattern X runs or tour X runs, stuff like that. So you can have all these different things run. You know, trigger 4, preset return to home position. Home position might be a tour. So this camera at this end with its, and it'll do a lot. And like I said, we will get the API for this. So that's available. I think it's actually, we have it now. So this way we can actually use some of these things and have it talk back and forth to Spectrum if we need it. So you can just have something to send to a notification server. So again, just the camera does some amazing stuff, and the what do you call it? The 3 megapixel functionality is the same. So, and then of course we have the information side of it, so we can name the camera, and then whatever is asking for information, you can give it a name. So you could say left side of building, right side of building. I call this one DW4K, and then I put the address in, 5436 West Crenshaw Street. You know, this way you can say location, but the location might be, you know, what part of the building it's in. You know, so this is north. I spelled north wrong. Hopefully I fixed that. North corner. I'm sure I went in and fixed that. There we go. See, I caught it. Typing too fast. There we go. North corner. Save. Then we go and look at security. And again, we can say users, HTTP, HTTPS. We're going to continue on here. Okay, mouse. There we go. We already saw user. That's under basic config. So we can have our mode for authentication. Do we want to use standard authentication or digest authentication? Connection mode, HTTP, only HTTPS, or both. And if you have a certificate, okay, your SSL type authentication certificate, that can be put here. And in this way, then the server that has the certificate, they both meet. That's how it authenticates. All right. Then, of course, IP address filtering, so you can only have certain IP addresses allowed to connect. All right. And this is one that's probably a class and a webinar or two by itself. So this is OpenVPN. So you can create a VPN connection from your server directly to the camera, basically encrypting the information. Okay, so this is something new. And again, security for network devices is not getting easier, it's getting much harder. And so you'll see more and more stuff like this added to our line as it goes along. So this is kind of an important one. And like I said, a little bit of training on it. It's just really setting your keys or your certificate, and both systems will talk, but nothing else can talk to the systems. Okay. Again, this is where you put in your other certification or client key file or IEE 802.1x. And again, this is, hold on. So I just want to go back to this one here. And I didn't go over it. I guess I skipped it, and I apologize. I really want you guys to set the date and time in the cameras, okay? Because it's very important, as you can see. And when we get to this higher security stuff, they're going to use the date timestamp, not this date timestamp, but the date timestamp in the data to do authentication to allow you to connect. So make sure, even if the customer's not worried about it, you worry about the date and time. And so right here, I was going to show you a video from it, but I'm going to try to connect to a Spectrum site. I got it queued up here. And we're going to go over to the 830X. And if someone could just let me know if it looks okay, everything looks okay. Maybe Raj or Gilbert. Let's see. Oh, my Q&A is down. Hold on. Q&A. Here it is. Okay, someone said it looks good. Okay, good. So anyway, so we're connected to this server. And what I want to do is I want to go through, rather than dragging around, because unfortunately I've got Zoom, I've got a 4K camera coming into my workstation. I don't want to have a lot of lag on your side. So what we're going to do is we're going to use presets. So what I'm going to do is I've got my one preset, which is my entry sign, right? So we're going to zoom in on that. We got our entry sign. Got a nice little tree there. We zoom in and you see everything in your field of view is in focus. All right, then we go to another one, and I have one called Road View. And it's going to go out. What it does is we have a vector set up, so it tries to take the shortest route to the camera. And so again, zoom in. That car wasn't parked there earlier. Almost get the license plate. I can make it so we could get it. Force it in there. Now we're going to go PTZ. We're going to do just road view, so it's going to look over this side, so it gives us the road in the front. And then we've got street sign. So we've got that street sign across the way. And now, come here, you. Street sign 2. We're going to zoom in a little more because this is where, you know, if you're really observing people or what's going on, where the 4K will get you where a 2 megapixel won't. I can read this whole sign. Immediate report, activities, Cerritos Neighborhood Watch. So we're in Bloomfield and Ash Creek, and someone's sporting some American flags over there. And just one more preset. And parking, going back to parking and entry. And I can make one of these my home position, and you can program them all on Spectrum. So you actually don't have to go in to set all your presets in the web page. You can go into Spectrum and set your presets and even set a tour. So if I go over here and I go, go over here, PTZ, I go to manage, I now have this set up so I can go, let's say I want parking and entry. I want that as my home. So that's home position. I can just force it to go to, it's already there. I can take this one and go to position and I'll swing around and go to that spot. You can have it go home. You can create some more details on it. You can create a tour from here. You can delete them and change them. So you can do it all inside Spectrum. So once the camera's up working and you can move it left and right, you can go in here and do the programming. And let's see if I can get back over to here. Here we go. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the DW website pretty quickly. All right. So DW website. First off, here you can go to the web page of the camera and go look at the accessories for it. These are the accessories. Got a ceiling mount, got a corner mount, parapet mount, and a wall mount. I was actually used mostly because these were in our California office, so I didn't have one in Tampa. I actually used our other corner mount for our other camera, and it worked fine. But got the corner mount there. That mounts to it, so the camera's away from the wall a little bit. Of course, you guys have all seen and used parapet mounts before, and the ceiling mount all threads directly onto it. So, again, you're speccing these out. Make sure you're speccing, of course, the mounts for them. You saw what was in the box with the camera. So all of our products that we're showing, except for now I think we're down to like 3 SKUs that are all are NDAA compliant. Okay, so if you're using federal dollars and either doing a project with federal dollars or you're doing a project for person X, but you also sell to the federal government, and some people are, there's some guys who are smaller integrators that sell to the federal government, and of course there's very big companies that sell to the federal government. And so we just want to make sure that you guys are on the same sheet of music and you're not where you're going to put an out of compliance product. If you guys always want to look up, it's the NDAA, it's the John McCain Act, and I believe the hard date of August 13th is still in effect, to where this stuff can't be used and can't even be on sites that have used federal dollars, federal property. If you want to sell to the federal government, you won't sell that product. So you guys can go take a look at that. But we have a whole list of products that are compliant along with this statement. So I just want to let you guys know that it's a very important thing. Also means there'll be some stuff will be new jobs will come up very quickly because people will be pulling stuff out because they don't want to be out of compliance. Customer webinars. So we're going to have probably by tomorrow whole list of webinars for August put up there, maybe even 1 or 2 into September. So keep an eye out for that. We have recordings of all of our webinars. I'm actually behind on 2 because I have to re-record them because Zoom squashed them. This one looks good. I actually looked at a bunch of forums and was able to tweak it so Zoom can do it. And now I'm going to answer questions.